everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jenny and I am starting off my September wrap-up today. So I have finished one other book this month, but it is for the BookTube prize, so that will have its own set of vlogs that you can go and check out. The first book that I finished this month was my audiobook, The Pull of the Stars by Emma Donoghue. And I can't say I'm very surprised that I absolutely adored this book. It is par for the course for me and Emma Donoghue. I have read 3 of her novels. I have given all of them 5 stars. So this is just our relationship, it seems. You know, she just can write female friendship, female, supportive, beautiful, layered relationships. And I'm trying to remember someone else that can write relationships like that, and I can't really think of anyone right now. Sorry for the alarm. Yeah, so I just really loved it. It definitely had some moments that turned my stomach because the medical details were not too bad, not too overwhelming for a lot of it, but then there were some times where she got very descriptive in the kind of more intense medical scenes that, you know, made me feel nauseous. But it was worth it for the amazing characters. Our main character, Julia Power, who is just turning 30, and she's taking care of her brother who's come home from World War I and lost his ability to, or lost his desire to speak, lost his ability to speak. So she lives with him, and she's a spinster, and she's a nurse midwife, and she is put into this separate ward with 3 beds for flu patients who are also pregnant, because they've noticed that the influenza of the pandemic of 1918 created premature labor in some women, etc. What I found super interesting was learning about the things that happened to people during that pandemic is very different from the COVID situation. So that was really interesting to read. Like, there were people that died within hours of contracting it. And I don't believe that COVID is that quick. It took a lot longer to kill people, I think. And of course, the situation for women at that time was described in multiple different characters, including Dr. Lynn, who was a real life character. The book itself takes place only over 3 days, and I really liked that because it propelled the story forward to me quite quickly, because you're basically following her for a whole shift, and your sense of time is warped by her experience, and I thought that was really interesting. And you know, there's a character named Bridie who is a fantastic character. I can't say that, like, the ending made me a little I don't know if I was disappointed or if it was a good ending, but like probably not my favorite ending. She tends to like to, I'm saying Emma Donoghue, she likes to often create a bittersweet ending, and sometimes you just want a sweet ending. So yeah, but I mean, it was glorious. I really devoured this audiobook. I listened to it. It's a 10-hour audiobook. I listened to it very fast because I just wanted to know what was going to happen, and I just kept listening. Even when I could have been, you know, watching videos or doing something else, I was just listening to it. So yeah, so I think I read it in 9 days, which for me is very fast for an audiobook of that length. So yeah, that was my first finish of September, and I guess I can just, I really think that I'm going to be surprised if I read an Emma Donoghue that I don't like. I know she still has quite a backlog that I can read through. So I'm going to look into that for next year. I'll probably read another one of her books and try to like not read her newest one yet. Read a backlog one next year and then read her newest one. But yeah, she's definitely, I mean, when you give one author 5 stars for 3 books, I feel like you can definitely put them in highly placed in a favorite author category. So she is one of my favorite authors. All right, I'll check in again when I've finished another book. Hey everyone. Last night I finished the novel Leonora in the Morning Light by Michaela Carter, which is a very interesting historical fiction novel about 2 real people, Leonora Carrington and Max Ernst. Both were artists, surrealist artists, who came to prominence in the Leonora Carrington's career is a little bit more complex than just coming to prominence, but Max Ernst was part of the Dada movement, and then part of the surrealist movement. They lived in France in the mid-1930s to the outbreak of World War II. Max Ernst actually was a soldier for the German side in World War I. And so you get this very interesting perspective of dual perspective for most of the novel between Leonora and Max. They had a love affair that lasted several years and was really a victim of the war. And so because Max was German, he was considered an enemy alien. And as France became occupied by the Nazis, part of that agreement that the French government made when they surrendered to the Nazi regime was that they would surrender their Jewish citizens. And so there was a lot of layers, and it was very complex. And this novel goes into that, which was interesting for me because I'd never really learned anything about that perspective. So how many people were fleeing France, were trying to get out of France, all the artists and the kind of people who were considered to be, there was that specific word for them. I will put that word here because I can't think of it in this moment. My brain is very fuzzy today. And so Max Ernst was put into work camps. He was, and he needed to get out of France in order to get to the United States to be safe from being deported or taken and putting into a work camp. And then Leonora Carrington was British, but living in France, and also was facing her own trials and tribulations through this time. She was very young, in her early 20s. She was very in love with Max, and they lived together in the South. But then she also was going through this internal struggle, according to this novelist. We don't know all these things for certain, but the novelist Michaela Carter did do a lot of research, so I feel like the assumptions she made about their relationship seemed to be, plausible. So that's all I really need, just plausibility. But because Leonora Carrington was young, Max Ernst was much older than her, at least 20 years older than her. She lost herself in the relationship, and so was still trying to find herself as an artist and work her way through who she was and what she wanted to accomplish with her life. And so the novel takes you through their relationship, and then also brings in the perspective of Peggy Guggenheim, who is a very famous patron of the arts. Her father died on the Titanic, and she, through her whole life, promoted artists, curated shows, supported artists, like literally gave them money to, very sorry about the hammering, literally gave them money to buy food, to make, like they would make her paintings in exchange for her patronage. And she also had a relationship with Max Ernst. They were actually married, and she was able to get him to the United States. So it's about that specific period of time. You don't really learn about Leonora Carrington much after she leaves France and lives in Mexico, which is where she spent most of her career, and the larger part of her life. But I did find it a really interesting novel. I will say Michaela Carter is apparently a poet, and I didn't find her writing to be... It was a bit clunky for me at times. There was some phrasing that I found very strange, and phrasing that didn't flow, which is kind of odd considering she's a poet. So I did enjoy the novel. I enjoyed the world building that she did, and I loved how she described the processing of their paintings, because she described the paintings in a way that made me want to go and look them up and see them. And so I think she got a lot of things right in this novel, but I think overall there were definitely some issues with it as a novel itself. And I think I would have preferred a kind of novel about Leonora Carrington more and about her life, as opposed to shortening it to this short period and then having more of Max and Peggy Guggenheim in it. But I understand why she made those decisions. So if you're interested in reading about artists and a really interesting period also in World War II, then I would recommend you reading that. And I will check in again when I've finished another book. Hi everybody, I finished my last read of September, which is Two Trees Make a Forest by Jessica J. Lee. This was the group read for the Naturalist book club run by Doris from Aldi Books and Heidi from My Reading Life. This was also a finalist in the Canada Reads competition, which happens once a year, usually in March. And I think it was a finalist in 2020 or 2021. I can't really exactly remember. And so I like to read those books because they're often well chosen and have really interesting topics. So Jessica J. Lee has British and Taiwanese via China ancestry. And this is a naturalist kind of description of Taiwan, the island itself. So flora, fauna, geographic descriptors, the way it was formed from, the earth forming millions of years ago, through to some of the social and historical perspective of the island and its different conquests and colonizers over the years from Japan to China. And I mean, that part was a little bit looser in description. I wouldn't say that it went into the political aspects super deeply. It was more relating to the political aspects via her parents as running from China, or her grandfather who was in the military, and just how they came to be living in Taiwan. So I didn't find that it explained, I think the politics and the warring history there is very complex and very layered, and obviously she couldn't go into it that much because that's not really what the book was about. And so she only described those scenarios as much as she needed to kind of give you the context for the reason her family moved there. And so she grew up in Canada and talks about how disjointed she was from her Chinese side of her family. And this is about that journey to reconnect with those people and to understand her grandparents and the choices they made in their lives. So it was really, I enjoyed it. I thought that the mixture of her hiking through a lot of different mountains and areas in Taiwan and her own personal journey to connect with the land itself, combined with her memories of her grandparents and her investigations into who they were and what their lives were like, was really, really interesting. for me, I probably liked the family and human aspects more than the nature descriptions. I mean, I love reading about nature. I think it was just for me a bit more than of the book than I would have hoped. But overall, I really enjoyed it. So I would recommend it if you're interested in learning more about Taiwan, because I think for me, I didn't know hardly anything. So I think this is a good way to be introduced to Taiwan as a country, as an island, as a a place full of wonderful nature and interesting realities in terms of living with the threat of earthquakes and things like that. And interesting in terms of a really complex and layered history as well. So that is the end of my reading for September, and therefore the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will be back again soon with another one.